Hello, YouTubers. I'm into silly hats for some reason tonight, but this one makes sense. This one's about the rise and fall, or the rise and decline of empires. We're looking specifically at Ibn Khaldun, who wrote extensively about this topic, and we can see that this applies to a lot of other areas in the world besides just the Muslim world during the decline of the Abbasid era, and he was also talking about the Umayyads. Ibn Khaldun was very curious about why it was that dynasties would rise and fall, and why it happened the way that it did all the time. And he said, there's a pattern here. There's a pattern. There's a reason why people can only be in power for so long before then they are gone. This can relate to the Roman emperor, the emperors, 1,000 years prior to this. This can relate to China and the dynastic cycle and the mandate of heaven. This can relate to anywhere in world history where we see a group of people in charge and why they start to decline and fall when it seems like everything is going so great. So I'm going to read this to you, and we're talking about the three stages that a dynasty takes. And so these are Ibn Khaldun's words. I'll kind of discuss each phase as we go through. So we have stated that the duration of the life of a dynasty, I'm on, if you're following along, page 156. So we have stated that the duration of the life of a dynasty does not, as a rule, extend beyond 3 generations. The first generation retains the desert qualities, desert toughness and desert savagery. Its members are used to privation and to sharing their glory with each other. They are brave and rapacious. Therefore, the strength of group feelings continues to be preserved among them. They are sharp and greatly feared. People submit to them. So this first generation of rulers in any dynasty, they're there because they fought their way in. They more than likely had to knock out the previous dynasty. So they're used to, two words here which you might not have heard before, privation, which means they're used to wanting things, needing things, living a life where they don't get all their needs met, and so they're tough because of this. The other word is rapacious, which basically means that they're excessively, aggressively greedy, and very much sharp, and having that hunger about them in order to want what is best. So this first generation of rulers in this argument is the best because they know what it's like before, and they have first-hand account of that, and they're all about group solidarity. So it's a good thing. Under the influence of royal authority, now we're on to the second generation, and a life of ease. The second generation changes from the desert attitude to sedentary culture, from privation to luxury and plenty, from a state in which everybody shared in the glory to one in which one man claims all the glory for himself while the others are too lazy to strive for glory, and from proud superiority to humble subservience. Thus, the vigor of group feeling is broken to some extent. People become used to lowliness and obedience, but many of the old virtues remain in them because they had direct personal contact with the first generation and its conditions. So the idea is they get used to it. They kind of feel like, well, this is how it's going to be from now on. One person is now in charge instead of like the group feeling of, we did it. And that person usually takes the form of some sort of emperor or leader, an ultimate authority or an absolute leader. Maybe a king, maybe the emperor, maybe the caliph, and this is where the softness starts to set in. But they still have that connection to the first group, and they remember why they're there. They remember that they had to fight in order to get this place, and so they still have a bit of that sharpness, and that's where it starts to kind of fall down. Now we get to the third generation. The third generation then has completely forgotten the period of desert life and toughness, as if it had never existed. They have lost the taste for group feeling because they are dominated by force. Luxury reaches its peak among them because they are so much given to a life of prosperity and ease. They become dependent on the dynasty and are like women and children who need to be defended by someone else. Group feeling disappears completely. People forgot to protect and defend themselves and to press their claims. With their emblems, apparel, horseback riding, and fighting skill, they deceive people and give them the wrong impression. For the most part, they are more cowardly than women upon their backs. When someone comes and demands something from them, they cannot repel him. The ruler then has need of other brave people for his support. He takes many clients and followers. They help the dynasty to some degree until God permits it to be destroyed, and it goes with everything it stands for. So this is when it all falls apart. The rulers have forgotten why they're there. They are just concerned about keeping themselves in power, and then they are just as bad as the people who they replaced. It's a cycle, this vicious cycle that he says repeats itself. His claim here is that these 3 generations of rulers, from very tough and ready to go and sharp to starting to relax a little bit and forget why they're there to completely have forgotten why they're there, cannot last more than 120 years as a rule. He said sometimes it happens a little bit longer than that, sometimes a little bit shorter, but that's generally the case, is that these 120-year-old dynasties then lose their zest and they're gone. So we can relate this to a lot of other things in world history. It's worth looking at. And when we do comparison, we can see, especially empires, it's kind of important to remember that these empires share a common pattern of how they lose their power. And many of them lost their power because of laziness and just relying on a life of luxury and security for themselves rather than for the group, the entire group. All right, continue to be awesome. I'll talk to you later.